Welcome to the Win All Day Everyday podcast presented by Prairie Hockey Academy. Today's 14th episode. Justin, it's remarkable that we've got this far, but I'm excited for the past episodes. I'm also excited for today's. We got a great guest and lots of excitement moving forward into the remainder of our podcast schedule. Lots of really good things happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Middle of October, here we go. And hockey season started. NHL season, everything's going, right?
Yeah, it's exciting. Hopefully everyone got the right pick in the pool. I don't know if you're in a snake draft or if you got bottom of the pool there. And it's really curious to see where Bedard got picked up in a lot of pools, whether he's going to pay off for you guys or
that's true.
whatnot. So lots of excitement. That's all the banter we hear in the locker room right now is who got who in the pool. And
I'm just grateful we're not talking about fantasy football anymore because my team is pitiful. So at least we can go to hockey.
and we've bypassed obviously the Rider talk as well. So there's lots of good things now that hockey's going. We can get our minds off football.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, episode 14, we get to be back here in studio with our guest, Barrett, and really thrilled to have a Saskatchewan coaching legend with us. He's no stranger to Prairie Hockey Academy either. He's been gracious to be involved for the first 7 seasons that we've had, and every year he comes out and runs a bit of a Russian development camp, and we have a pile of fun with the youngsters on the ice. And so, Dave King is here in studio with us. Dave, no stranger to coaching in the game of hockey. 1984, 1988, 1992, coached the Olympic men's team for Team Canada, went on to coach the Calgary Flames for a few seasons, Montreal Canadiens for a couple as an assistant coach, and then moved on to be the, first ever head coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets franchise history. And, from there, first Canadian coach, or first coach, non-Russian coach, the coach in the Russian Super League before it was the KHL. And we might hear some stories about that and, Swedish Elite League and Germany. And before all that, right, in Saskatchewan, U of S, Saskatoon Quakers, things like that. So Dave, it's an absolute pleasure to be able to have you here with us for an hour, and just thank you for your time and
thank you
for being here to share some wisdom for our listeners. We've got a great show planned.
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me. It's I always enjoy coming back to Prairie Hockey Academy. It's been, as you said, 7 years, and 7 very enjoyable years. And at my age, those little guys on the ice give you lots of energy. So it's always fun to do it with the kids. I really enjoy the ice sessions.
Yeah, it was great having you, with even just the E.14 practice this afternoon, and they just love all the drills that you incorporated and added some of that Russian flavor into the skill development was really good for our guys to understand that to run systems, you got to have the skill set, and I'm sure they picked up on a few things. So that was great to see. And as Justin has said, you're, a storied career from a coaching perspective, going from being a teacher to, a coach. And what I was saying to Justin earlier, how you transitioned from lots of different levels of hockey, like, the CIS level, the Western League level, successful at all those, coach of the year in both, going on to the National Hockey League, and then even the Olympic, story in between, and how you're in the Olympic Hall of Fame and silver medal at the Olympics. Lots of really brilliant things, and I'm sure you've got lots of stories to share there. But maybe you want to talk about some of the differences that you've noticed in your career between each of those categories, like going from junior/university into the Olympic program, how much of a change that was.
Yeah, it is a big change. I started coaching junior B hockey. Actually, I coached bantam hockey in Saskatoon. I was teaching at Aidan Bowman Collegiate, and I was the football coach, the wrestling coach, and then they asked me to coach the hockey team, so I said yes, I would. So we were busy, but and then I started coaching the junior B Quakers, which I really enjoyed. Went to the Winter Games in 1974, and then I got involved eventually with major junior hockey with a team called the Billings Bighorns, which was the Calgary Centennials, and they were moved down to Billings, Montana in the Western Hockey League, and I really enjoyed it. I found that level very interesting because the players are really focused on becoming professional players. So in a lot of cases, there's a lot of players that play at times a little bit more for themselves than for the team because they want to be scouted, they want to make a difference every game. They're trying to make it to pro hockey, so they're trying to impress people. When you go to college hockey, I went to the University of Saskatchewan after that, and it's different altogether because the guys are older, more mature. They see hockey as being really important, but their studies also rate up there very highly with them. And so they play a bit more collective game. They play a little bit more for the group than for themselves. And we had great success at Saskatchewan. We won the won the national championship. Took us 3 tries to do it. We got to the national final 3 times, lost twice, and the 3rd time we won it. So that was probably one of the most enjoyable times of my life, was to be involved with the University of Saskatchewan Huskies. It's a great program, and now they have a new facility, and so it's really top of the line. And then from there, I went to the Olympic program. I got a chance to be the Olympic coach in 1984 Sarajevo, and so that started me really on another trajectory. I had plans to go back after coaching the Olympics. I was going to go back. I was on leave from the University of Saskatchewan. I never went back. I just kept on moving up and enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, so that national program, I mean, there's a lot of people that are unfamiliar with that because Hockey Canada doesn't have that anymore.
That's right.
Maybe can you tell us a little bit about, the makeup of those teams and where you guys would play? Because you didn't just train on the Olympic year.
No, that's
year?
right, Justin. Hockey Canada recognized, and CHA at that time recognized that there was no Russians in the NHL. They were all in Russia. The Czechs couldn't leave their country. So the competition was really high. And to put together a team in 6 or 7 months, just the Olympic year, and try to compete was really tough. So Hockey Canada and CHA decided to reconnect with the national team, which goes back to Father Bauer. When he was in charge of the national program, it was a full-time team. So we formed a full-time national team program. We played probably 90% of our games in Europe. We played Russian touring teams here, but all the other games were in Europe. We would train for 2 weeks and then play a lot of games in 2 weeks. And that was the format. So it was done to try to fast-track players over 2 or 3 years to get them to be at the Olympic level. Now, the one flaw to the program is the fact that some guys get too good too soon and they go to the NHL. And that's a problem. But again, that's what we felt we would do, and it wasn't something we weren't happy about. It happened to us. So, I was able to be involved in the 84 Olympic team, and then, of course, I stayed on till 88, and we ran a program for 4 years leading up to the 88 Olympics, and then again to 1992. So for about 9 or 10 years there, we had full-time standing national teams, and it was a great concept. And it was really interesting to watch the NHL use it. Right. Because they would send us players that they had that maybe weren't quite ready, needed more grooming, more experience. And so we started to work with the NHL, and that was a big plus in terms of making us more competitive. And finally, in 1992, we won a silver medal, and then in 2018, we won the bronze medal. So, it was good.
Yeah, that's right. In my intro, I left out that in 2018, you went back, you and Willie Desjardins, the coach of that team, and won the bronze. And we saw kind of the start of even the German national team becoming really starting to show up on the national stage, and they showed up at that event, and obviously Leon Draisaitl's kind of has started that trend there. But
you can really see that international hockey has improved so much. I just got back from a holiday in Austria, and I watched a game in the Austrian Elite League, the top league, and there's a lot of players there that caught my attention that are good hockey players, and we have players from so many countries: Slovenia, Austria, Switzerland, Germany. We have a lot of countries supplying us with players. Denmark. It's just amazing. So the game has really improved a great deal, and it's become a very competitive playing field for Canada now. There's no guarantees. We have to play well to win.
While we're still on that Olympic discussion, what's your take? Are we going to see best on best at the Olympics anytime soon?
Yeah, I think the NHL really wants that, and I think the players really want it. So I think that will happen. The problem with the best on best is I don't think the NHL can guarantee that every time it's going to work for them. There are financial things they have to look at, and it interrupts their league, which is a concern for them. When the games are played in Asia, for example, too, the television times, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Right. So the marketability for their product, their players, is not high. So the NHL believes a lot in marketing. They're a financial institution as much as they're a sporting institution. So there's no guarantee, but I think we will get back to best on best for a little while here, and I think the fans enjoy that. It'll be interesting to see if Russia gets back into it. I'm not sure we're ever going to get best on best again if we don't get Russia back into the equation. Right. And I'm not saying they should be back in. Probably they shouldn't be. But without them, the playing field's a little different.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of Russia, with the national program, you guys had quite a bit of success, as you mentioned, the silver medal in '92. Mm-hmm. But even in that zone, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the first Canadian team to beat Russia in Russia since the Summit Series.
That's right. We won the Izvestia Cup in 1983, leading up to the Olympics, that 83-84 year. And we were the first team to beat the Russians in their building for a long time.
11 years.
And
or so,
so it was kind of sweet, and we really enjoyed that. It was a great experience. And for us, it was a real accomplishment because the Russians were loaded. Like in those days, I can't tell you about their teams. They were there was nobody in the NHL. They had all their top guys. I mean, Tretiak was in goal in '84. Guys it was just loaded with great players. So lots of fun. Tough. It's tough coaching sometimes when you don't have a chance to win. However, you have to stress to the players they're getting better, and you as a coach, hopefully, you're getting better too.
And then you made the transition from that sort of in-house program that Hockey Canada had in place for the Olympics to the National Hockey League, with Calgary, Montreal, Columbus, different stops along the way. How did you transition from, sort of having this ragtag Bad News Bears group of athletes to the best in the world?
Yeah, it's certainly a transition because when you get to the NHL, I mean, we had Gary Suter, Al McInnes on defense. We had Joe Nieuwendyk, Theron Fleury, Gary Roberts. These guys are world-class players, and but I really enjoyed moving to the NHL. It was the right time to do it, I think. I had, enjoyed myself in international hockey, but now it was time to see what the NHL was like, and it was great, a great experience. It's, your job is on the line all the time. There's no nights off for coaches at all. There's no sympathy for coaches. You are going to be the first moving part in the engine to be changed, and it's the way it is. But I enjoyed Calgary. And then I got a chance to go to Montreal and be an assistant coach there, which was really, that's a great place, Montreal. I got to tell you, Saturday night, Montreal, game night, wow, it's unbelievable. In Montreal, it's always funny because the fans are very supportive, yet they're very fickle. And we used to always say in the dressing room, they're with you, win or tie, just don't tie too much. And that's the way it was in Montreal. And then I went to Columbus as the first coach of that expansion team, and that was a truly great experience, which I really, really enjoyed. And we had a great year the first year, and it was a terrific experience. And then I went back to Phoenix. Actually, I went to Russia for a couple of years, and then I came back to Phoenix and I coached with the Coyotes for, I guess, 6 or 7 years with Dave Tippett, who I had coached in the Olympics in '84 and in '92. So I got a chance to work with one of my players as he was the head coach and I was one of the assistant coaches. So it was always good. And I always enjoyed coaching because I've never been satisfied with where I was. I always tried to get better. I've always been a guy to write things down. I've always watched games kind of analytically. And I've tried to make sure that even now when I watch games, I still write things down. I still enjoy trying to develop my skills as a coach because I'm finished coaching, but I still love the game and want to know more about the game.
Yeah. I think, Scott tells us, your son, Scott King, works with us at Prairie Hockey, and he'll tell us often, sitting around just watching some games or doing anything or trying to have breakfast, he said, my dad has a whiteboard, a coaching whiteboard just tucked away beside the couch or beside the kitchen table. And he'll always pull it out and want to drop a play or see something. So I think it's, like you said, you still enjoy that and just,
I do.
Drawing things out, writing things down and
better. I think it's really important. I think, as you get older, if you ever lose the drive to get better and to improve, I think that's when life starts to stand still for you, So I tell anybody, there's no age limit on learning.
Yeah.
Just keep trying to develop your skills, no matter what your occupation is. It keeps you motivated and it keeps you looking forward to the next day. So I've always tried to keep working on my skills. And as I said, I'm not coaching anymore, but I still love watching the game and learning.
In that time that we've just talked about, from Billings to the U of S to Columbus, that was, an era of tough guys and red line, and now the tough guys have been removed and the red line's been removed. The game has changed. What are some things in your career over that span that you have changed your mind on in terms of maybe it was a coaching style or different things that you've picked up that you've be like, 10 years ago I didn't do it this way, but now this is how I've done it?
Yeah, the game has changed drastically. The rule changes the NHL has made was designed to open the game up. They're designed to make it possible for a smaller player to play and play effectively. For years, we didn't enforce the rule book. I mean, there's a rule book, and you'd read it and you'd kind of chuckle because, I mean, tackling, interference was completely okay. No one ever called it. And then when they started, had zero tolerance. They had 2 referees brought into the game. They took the red line out. All those things were suddenly, it changed the game. And so it was really fascinating to be a coach at that time because you had to change. Like all of a sudden, when the rules change, you have to, as a coach, look at it and say, okay, what does that mean to our team, our lineup? What does it mean to our tactics? How can we use this to our advantage if we can? And usually good coaching rules, it really ruins the rule changes that are made. Like they bring a new rule and we find a way to screw it up, you know? And so that happens. But I think it's made the game much more exciting for fans. Smaller players can play and they're difference makers. They're guys that can sell tickets. These young players that are not so big but very fast and very skilled now can play. It's amazing when you think about Theoren Fleury. He played in an era when you could tackle.
Right.
And he was still very effective. Now imagine him in today's rules. It would have been amazing. But so it's been great. And you do start to change your philosophy a little bit. I was always a little bit in favor of smaller players. I had no problem with it because I always felt that being skilled and fast still could make you, even as a defenseman. Like always at the draft, they always, the first question was, how big is he? You know, and now those questions aren't asked anymore. It's their skill set and those kind of things. So it's made coaching, I think, much more interesting. At one time, the game was pretty pugilistic. Mm-hmm. You know, it came down to the playoffs to, it was a war. And I think it's still tough. The playoffs are long and they're a grind, but I still think it's better hockey all the way around.
Yeah, the game has definitely changed. I mean, you wrote a book about that, right? This loose pucks and ice bags,
yep.
And just kind of detailing,
yep.
How the game has changed. And we're here we are on, the eve of, the NHL season starting and the NHL, the schedule makers,
yep.
Call it luck, but they likely not luck, but they chose to put Connor Bedard up against Sidney Crosby for opening night, right? And are we going to see the game continue to evolve with somebody like a Connor Bedard in it?
Yeah, we are. That's a very good question, Justin. I think we are because he's not big. He's very explosive and very skilled and got great instincts. And I, when I'm out there with the Prairie Hockey Academy kids, you can see now the quality of coaching is so high. And these kids have got skills that are really impressive for their age. So I think our average young player now is getting better than they were 25 years ago. I mean, there's no longer a guy who, if you can't skate, it's hard to play our game. If you can't handle a puck and pass the puck, it's hard to play the game. And I think now we all recognize the importance of instinct is really important to the game. Game sense is really, really critical. Size is being, I think, relegated to the back seat a little bit. So, yeah, it's a very exciting game, and I think, it's going to get better and better. And I wonder how much more skill we can get, but I think there's more there. I think the quality of skill is very high, and the tactical part of the game now it's speed. Like it's a fast game. You can ask any player that's played the game now, and they'll always admit it's much faster.
For sure it is, yeah. And you had some time over in Europe,
yep.
Lots of different stops, whether
yep.
it was Germany or Sweden, Finland as well. Were you?
Nope.
No. But your time also in Russia, you wrote the book,
mm-hmm.
The King
yeah.
of Russia.
Yeah.
Lots of, I'm sure, great stories,
mm-hmm.
great memories. You were there before the KHL, you were there in the KHL. Yeah. You've had some stops along the way. What were some things that you took from your North American coaching style over to Europe? Because obviously they do things differently over there. Mm-hmm. What were some things that you sort of like planted your flag on and like, look, we'll change some things, but this has to be locked in. This is a non-negotiable.
I think the one thing I would advise anybody that's going to go coach in another country is, respect their game the way it is. Mm-hmm. Respect their culture within their game. Trying to change culturally anything is difficult when you go to Europe because those things are they're ingrained in the game. The one area I tried to think, I said, I think we can improve would be our defensive play. as a group collectively. We could play better defensively. I watched some of their games from the year before and thought, probably I'm going to leave their offense. I like their offense. It's instinctive, it's flow, it's rhythm. They challenge you one-on-one. They do some things, and offensively, they at that point in time they were better than we were, and so I just tried to help them with the defensive game. And the one thing I tried to do that I think made a real impact in Russia was I used videotape. I mean, I broke every game down to about a 7 or 8 minute video review of the game, and they were fascinated. Like for the most of their lives, yes, they had video, but it would be shown to them if it was a bad game. They'd have to sit for an hour and a half and watch the game while the coach barked at them and just ranted about, there's no instruction, no stopping and showing. It was just, it was a punishment.
Yeah.
So when I came in, I used video as a constructive thing, short, concise, positive things along with things we have to improve. And I can remember doing some video sessions, and our equipment guy, he was so fascinated, he had the video camera in the back, and he was videoing the whole thing because he wanted to show. I asked him why. He said, I want to show my relatives. We're doing this new science of hockey. So, so I enjoyed that. And I think that's the one thing I left behind was then all the Russian coaches started to think, okay, we got to use video in a different way, not punishment. It's instruction. And so, it was great. And Russia was wonderful. My wife and I lived in Magnitogorsk. I coached Malkin, who was a really good player. Nikolai Kulemin played on that team. They were great young. They were both 18-year-old players in the top league and playing very, very well for us. And then I coached in Yaroslavl. And Yaroslavl was very interesting for me because a year and a half prior to that, the plane crash had occurred. And so it was very interesting to go to a team that was trying to rejuvenate itself. It was amazing to see the response the people had to the team, how much it meant to them. To go to the cemetery and see 37 grave sites with these massive headstones, a full picture of a guy in his uniform, things like that. We had a chapel within the rink. Both sides of the rink had pictures of all the people who died in the plane crash. So it made a real impact on me that this is an important game.
Yeah. For
a lot of people, a lot of communities, whether it be hockey, soccer, baseball, football, these are things that are good for communities. They bring you together, and when that kind of tragedy happens, it's really dreadful. But so I really enjoyed myself in Europe, and I learned a lot. I had already, because I had coached so long against the Russians, I knew their game pretty well, and I was able to implement some of our things. And it was easy for me at times because I had in Magnitogorsk I had Dmitry Yaskevich and Igor Korolev, two Russian players that had played in the NHL, both spoke English, and they were my translators. So things like that made it real easy for me.
Fascinating. Yeah, I've actually had the opportunity to be in a couple of those stops as well, not coaching, but just passing through and some travels. And the part of respecting those cultures and all those coaches, they want to learn, they want to improve as well. And I think that's brilliant how you helped shape that part of it. Because even now today, we use the program Instat, which is Russian-owned.
That's right.
They've come so far that now they're the leading edge. Like they own the software that everyone over here now uses. So.
Yeah, that's right. No, it's changed a lot. And I can tell you about Sweden. I coached in Sweden, and I'd always respected, in my NHL career, I had Swedish players. And I thought, gosh, these guys really play for the team. And so when I coached in Sweden, it became so clear to me that they play for each other. They play for each other. They're so collective. They get their high, their vibration out of being good together. And their collective play offensively and defensively is amazing. So, it's really interesting. And I coached in Japan. And I can remember the first time I was in Japan, I'm coaching the national team. And I'm over there and I watch my first practice from the stands. So I'm watching them practice, and I can see they're doing some 3-on-2 flow drills. And it caught my attention after 7 or 8 minutes that the same guy was always shooting the puck on each rush. And I said to my translator, am I right that the same guy always shoots the puck? Oh, yes. He says, yes. He's the oldest. And I said, we're going to change that in a hurry. But that's the culture.
Right.
Respect the older people. So the players, they respect the older players. He gets the puck. If he's got any chance to be in a good position, he should get the puck. So respect the culture if you want to be a good hockey coach in Europe or Russia or wherever.
Right.
Tell me a little bit, I don't want to change too much of what we're talking about, but Loose Pucks and Ice Bags with obviously the title of your second book. Tell us why that's the title. I mean, I know why, but I'd love for our
Yeah.
listeners to kind of know a little bit of why that means so much to you.
Well, in all my coaching career, people ask, always asking, like what makes the difference? Some people can give you great, surprising answers that are full of technical stuff. And I've always thought, no, to me, the game, it's simplistic at times. It comes down to loose pucks. If you win free pucks, loose pucks, then you're in control. You've got the puck. And then ice bags simply means that after the game's over, you must have competed because you got to put ice bags on your feet and hands and everything else. So loose pucks and ice bags to me was a simplistic way to look at the fact that if you don't work at this game, you can't win. You can have all the skill you want. You have to have the effort. And really the game comes down to, as I've talked about many times, two aspects of hockey are really important. One is the decisions you make. You make decisions on the ice that are really important. And those decisions, if you make more smart decisions than the other team does and make fewer bloopers than the other team does, that really enhances your chance to win. But the second part of the equation are choices. And choices are not made with your head. Choices are made with your heart. So you might, it might be a shot in the point and you're going out to block it. And you might just be partially in the shot lane. You don't want to get hurt. So the shot gets by you. Nobody else would know that, but you do. When you're back checking and another couple of hard strides might get you to that guy, but you don't do it, no one can even notice that because you're about 90%. So people in the fans think it's great, the stands. Oh, it's great, he's working. But you could have gone harder. So I guess what I'm saying is if you want to win, it's tough choices. And you sometimes are the only guy that knows it and appreciates it, that you made the tough choice. Blocking a shot at the key moment is really important, things like that. So, the game is decisions and choices, and that's a big part of the game. And so that's what loose pucks and ice bags really, I think, talks about throughout the book. I often talk about the fact that it's a game of effort too. Don't underestimate that everything starts with hard work.
That's good.
On the next segment that we want to jump into and transition over to is our advice section. We call it Guide and Provide. And so love to pick your brains a little bit on advice that you might give to maybe, we're still early in the season here. So some advice for a young player, say U18 to U15. What are some things that you would give them advice for the first half of their season?
I think one of the most important thing, like I look at the game and I watch your practice at PHA, and the kids practice good things. They've got good habits. They're working hard, and that's really, really important. I think one of the things you have to always start to build at the start of the season is perseverance. Are you prepared to deal with some difficulty? The game is not going to be easy. Getting results is not easy. You're going to have ups and downs in your game. So with young players, I always talk about work on your skills, but accept challenges off the ice or on the ice, emotional situations. You got to work on your self-management skills, like being able to persevere, being able to dig in when it gets tough. It's not just a game of skill. There's the mental part of the game is so important. And I've seen players overcome adversity and become great players. And I've seen some great players, unbelievably skilled players, not be able to deal with adversity and never make it.
Right.
So, I think for young players starting a season is work on your game, work on your skills. But when you meet challenges, look forward to it. It's a moment when you can get better. Those are the little bumps in the road are really important for you, because if you can overcome those, you'll become better. And that's important.
And in terms of advice, you're a grandparent, you're a parent, both your grandchild and your son have played the game at a higher level and done well. What is some advice you'd give to young parents out there that their kids are just, they're U13, U15, U18, maybe they're at the rep level, maybe they're just on the cusp. What are some words of advice you'd give to a parent?
Well, that's difficult, because parents are emotionally attached to their kids. Obviously, they should be. And the welfare of their child is the most important thing for them. So when a parent sees a young player maybe not playing very much, or, in some circumstance like that, it concerns them. And then obviously they can get emotional. So it's a recipe at times for stress and conflict. So all I tell parents is, put it in perspective. It's easy to criticize the coach in front of your child. Don't do that. Don't criticize in public or in the car going home. The kid shouldn't dread the ride going home. Talk about other things besides the game. Don't criticize the coach. If you have an issue with the coach, talk to the coach. Don't get the kid involved in thinking his coach is not a good coach, not a good person, those kind of things. So it's really important that parents understand that coaching's difficult. I mean, I don't think coaches now at youth level are live and die with having to win, but they would like to win. But the coaches too have another duty, and that is to play the players. You've got to give them an opportunity, and sometimes you got to hold your breath. You got to put a guy in a situation where there's somebody probably better, but that's okay. He's got to earn his chance. If you don't give him that chance, you'll never know. So for parents, it's tolerance. Just take it easy a little bit. Keep your head on. Again, self-management skills are really important for parents. Just don't put your son or daughter into a situation where it's uncomfortable for them.
Right. And on that topic of coaches, what you've seen young coaches on both sides of the water. And I'm sure that times you've been like, oh, I wish I could just have 5 minutes with that guy to give him some advice, or that lady as they get into coaching. What are some nuggets that you can drop on to coaches that are out there maybe listening, or just some words of wisdom to help a young coach who's maybe at that minor level, or even just someone in junior that's trying to, springboard from that spot in their careers onwards? Yeah.
Well, I've always felt if a coach isn't having fun, you can be guaranteed the kids aren't having fun. So it's really important that a coach has, I've talked about this a lot, self-management skills. You've got to be able to deal with youngsters that make mistakes. You've got to deal with parents that have a strong opinion. So you have a difficult challenge, and I think it's really important that, first of all, you have a coaching staff. Don't ever coach by yourself. Have a staff of 2 or 3 people, because collectively you're better than just one. And then I think the other thing is always coach within the realm of your skill level. Don't start trying to do things that are too technical, too difficult. Maybe you don't quite totally understand. The game doesn't have to be complex. Number one, I think if you can create a good environment in the dressing room, your team will be a competitive team. Because when kids are having fun and they're playing for each other, I think your team is going to be as competitive as it can be. A lot of parents and a lot of coaches, I think, they lose perspective a little bit. The expectations are that these kids can do some things that they really can't do. There's certain things that are very hard. Game sense. Sometimes people say they label, and I always tell young coaches, don't label players too early. He's not tough. He's not smart. Some youngsters don't want the puck. When they get it, they're nervous, and so they get rid of it and make a bad play. They've got game sense, but they haven't got confidence. It's not game sense, it's confidence. So, as a coach with youngsters, be careful labeling. A kid's not tough. Some little guys are little. They aren't confident in going into the boards against some big guy. And so, in time, they'll probably be okay. But just avoid labeling people too early, because I think that's so unfair to the athlete.
That's good. I had a mentor that used to talk about the same thing in coaching. He'd say, not a similar idea, but he'd always just say, you have to, as a coach, you have to learn how to see the person and not always the performance, right?
Yeah.
Because when you just look at the performance, you can easily label as opposed to recognizing, how do we, coach up that person, right?
Yeah.
Help
That's
them.
why I've always recognized the importance of effort. Effort usually is pretty clear, and as I said before, I've seen a lot of people achieve things that I never thought they could achieve, but the effort was always there. They're very resilient people, and as I said before, I've had some talented young players that I thought were guaranteed NHL players, but they couldn't deal with stress. They couldn't deal with expectations. They couldn't deal with coaches that were rough to play for. So young players have to. It's a bumpy road, but make it as much fun as you can. Like, I still think, even coaching the NHL, you got to have fun. Guys like it. The guys love it when you're having fun. Like, every so often when I was coaching in the NHL, I'd have one of the assistant coaches run the practice, and I'd just go from line to line with the guys and talk and ask how things were going, and just play the role of kind of a Santa Claus, just being a nice guy to be around, And so you got to do that. You got to change things up. You can't always do it the same. You're trying to avoid that grind that always happens. When the kids come to the rink in the morning, it's cold, it's 40 below. They've had a tough weekend. Remember those things. That first practice should be one where the kids can get a little bit of energy back. So coaching it's common sense, but however, we often don't have that. I always make sure I tell coaches to never start the day angry. Like you had a bad game last night, it's over. Get by it, turn the page, and don't start the next day angry about the game last night, because players recognize when you're angry, and they don't enjoy it. Life is not fun for an athlete when he knows the coach is angry.
Yeah.
I think a couple pieces. I know we've got another segment. We want to get into some stories, but I want to hijack it a little bit. And for those of our listeners that don't want to hear a 3 to 5 minute segment on Prairie Hockey Academy, they can fast forward to the end. But I would like to, you talked about a couple things, and even in some of my, some of your books where I've read, fascinating. I look back to even your time with the Calgary Flames. You didn't really have a goalie coach back then. Like your staff wasn't there, and I look at, some of the hockey academies and, what Hockey Canada did when they brought in the Hockey Canada accredited school model and allowing some of the coaching and what we get to do every day. It's, you just talked about some of these pros that, or the players, that you thought were like guaranteed pros that weren't able to because they, maybe, just weren't able to develop on the mental strength side or different pieces to withstand some of those. And I look at what we do on an everyday at Prairie to try and develop that holistic athlete, right? Whether that be with a skills coach or a power skating or a strength coach or a goalie coach or, one of our programs I'm really excited about we developed 2 years ago is our whole mental wellness and mental strength program. Because, in the whole world that we talk about today with mental health, we try to, help them identify that there's a difference between mental illness, mental health, mental wellness, mental strength. And how do you develop these stress responders and deal with the stress in your life? Because you can't go stress-free in life. You just learn how to, you learn how to, you do things like you get up and run 5 miles a day or different pieces to build resiliency, right? And so I just think, a few episodes ago, Dustin Friesen, our U18 prep head coach and director of performance, is on. He talked about this being his 4th season with us and just, he's loved it just from the ability to build a program and what he's seen in those 4 years coming off of COVID to, us building a gym and some going to 4 teams and a dressing rooms and things. But you've been here for 7. And I think you give a really good outside perspective, and love to just hear your thoughts on what you've seen, the development of Prairie Hockey Academy, but even just the minor hockey circles and the level of U18 prep hockey that you experience today.
That's a very good question, and I can tell you it's a very easy answer in many ways. The thing I've always really liked about the Prairie Hockey Academy is I think you see the athlete as a person before you see him as a player. I think when I talk to the coaches after practice, the insights they have onto the personality and the background of a young player and, maybe things he's presently going through or has gone through before in the past. That knowledge of that type of thing, I think you do a great job with the person. And I think when you talk about, mental wellness and mental health, those kind of things, we talked about resiliency. Those are the kind of attributes and things we need from sport. If you only see him as a hockey player, that's it's the way it is with some people, but it's not the right way to see it. You got to see him in a holistic point of view, and he is a person. Can you help him become a better person? Can you help him become a more resilient person, a person that can face some adversity? Because as you said, there's no adversity-free environment to be had. So Prairie Hockey does a great job of that. And of course now, beyond that, I think that's always been there. Now when I see the whole program, you cover all the bases. You've got great on-ice training. You've got great off-ice training. You've got very qualified coaches. And as I said, I always get the impression talking to your coaches, they care about the kids. I never have the coaches here talk about having to win. They're always talking about development and, and they share things. Sometimes I'll listen in the coaches' room, and I like the way the guys will exchange ideas on a player, trying to get somebody else's opinion. So, when you care for the person, I think that's the special difference that is needed in hockey academies. The Prairie Hockey Academy is one of them. They do that. I think you do a really good job of the person.
Yeah, appreciate that. Last year, you and I got to sit at the Barkman Arena in Caronport, and we were watching a hockey game. I think it was our U17 prep team, and I just remember you commented on a young player that was on the ice, and you said, and I don't remember, you named his jersey number, and you said that youngster, he's a good little hockey player. And you said a comment to me that I'd love our listeners maybe to understand. Maybe it's something that you could give to some of our younger athletes, but you just said, what the challenge for him right now from becoming a good player to a great hockey player is learning that, he now has to use his skills to serve his teammates and not himself. Yeah. Maybe just a message for some of the young players that are out there that are working so hard to, watching the videos, developing the skills, studying Connor Bedard.
Yeah.
What do they do with those skills once they have them?
Well, if you've ever watched a guy like Sidney Crosby play in his past, or McKenna, players like that, and McDavid, they're very talented players that can do a lot by themselves, but they all have that ability to make sure their game serves the team. And by that I simply mean, they play a game that the other players respect because it's an honest game. They play away from the puck defensively as hard as they can. They're guys that you understand. You clearly understand after a while watching them that they're playing for the team. They're not playing for the name on the back. They're playing for the crest on the front. And that's an old cliche, and it's used a lot. But the game gets tougher and tougher as you go up. And so you have to learn that, and you do start to understand that pretty soon you achieve your success by playing with and for other guys. If you start trying to do too much yourself, it doesn't work. The higher level you go, the more it's so difficult. So you can develop synergy with other people, and that's really an important thing. I mean, you have to be able to have your skills serve the team, and that means passing the puck at the right time. That means sharing the puck. That means thinking about the team, and not just about yourself. And I think if you asked me before about parents, a lot of parents are worried about what this youngster, is he scoring goals? Is he getting points? What's his ice time? All those issues. Sometimes you got to look at, the coach's point of view as serving the team is really important, because if you can get 18 young players playing together and playing for the right reasons, it's quite a powerful thing. Quite a powerful thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's great. And, you hijacked one portion of it. And so I'm gonna throw one more curveball in. My athletes know that when I do the curveball thing, that there's change. And so we're into week 14 of our podcast. I'm gonna add a new element.
Is this Tour de France again, or where are we going now?
Not quite, but it's we've had such legendary guests over the last few weeks, and I've been thinking about this question, and I'm gonna throw it on you, Dave. It's a bit of a curveball. If you were the commissioner of the National Hockey League for one day, what would you change or add?
Oh,
there's the curveball.
That's a real curveball. Well, that's hard to give you a definitive answer. You've kind of stumped me on that one. I would say probably I would ask the owners to remember that it is a game, that yes, there's a financial bottom line. I'd ask the players to be conscious of teams have to balance their books. So to me, the one aspect of hockey that worries me all the time is the financial aspect. The game is changing, the rules are changing, the quality of our game is getting better, but I see on the horizon some financial issues that worry me. And so I think they have to understand that we're not the NFL, we're the NHL. We have Canadian teams with the Canadian dollar. I'd really stress that worry about your own team, but worry about the league. Have a greater holistic approach to the whole thing. Do things that are good for the whole league and not just your team. Because most teams are very self-centered. They'll do anything they can to improve their own lot in life. And sometimes you do things that aren't right. Like, for example, now you look at the new expansion rules for expansion teams. They're very generous. We have an expansion team, Las Vegas. What is it, third or fourth year in the league, they win the Stanley Cup. Because the rules are better. They're giving everybody a chance to. But that's a holistic approach. that these teams shouldn't be purged for 10 years or 15 years before they make the playoffs. So I guess I would just simply say that ownership and players have to think about what's good for the game. And I mean the game, I mean financially, the whole package.
That's good. We've got a couple minutes left. I want to wind up with a couple of stories.
Oh, yeah.
There's rumors going back a few years to your time in Calgary when you were taking young Scott, who's now as the associate coach with the Moose Jaw Warriors. You're taking him back and forth to practice one day and came back from a game that maybe his effort and performance wasn't quite up to the King family standards. And can you unpack that story for us, maybe?
Yeah, and I could probably add some things that Scott didn't tell you. But I had watched Scott play a few times in the course of a week, and I just thought, like, is this the best he can do? Is this the effort he thinks is adequate to get some fulfillment from the game? And he just looked like he was just loafing out there. So we were going home, and we got home, parked the car in the garage, and I took his hockey bag, and I knew what I was doing. I mean, I knew he'd be upset, but I took it out to the garbage and said, "You don't need this because you don't work hard enough to even consider playing this game." I mean, so I'll just put it in the garbage. And of course, he didn't know what to say. He pouted for about a week. But I just wanted I wanted at a young age for him to understand that you got to put your heart into things. If you really want to. Because he loved hockey. He loved hockey, but I saw him just loafing and floating and letting somebody else do the work, and he was going to score the goal. And he could score, but I wanted him to become a real good team member. I felt Scott was playing for himself, not playing for the team.
Right. Yeah, he wasn't going to find any loose pucks playing that way.
No.
But that's right.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Love that story.
Yeah.
I've also had the chance to travel overseas, and I've experienced some occasions with groups that we've taken over and teams we've taken over to the Baltics and to Kazakhstan and Russia, where things are taken care of. I mean, maybe back, like debit cards and credit cards and bank transfers weren't a thing. So everything gets handed to you in a brown paper bag or some type of a suitcase, and bills are paid and such.
Yeah.
Your experience in I don't know if this was back in the Super League era or in the KHL, but you had a moment where you were fronted your paycheck, and you didn't realize maybe that it was in dollar bills in a briefcase that you carried around somewhat recklessly.
Yeah, it's interesting. My first time with Magnitogorsk, we were in the preseason, and we were in Switzerland, playing in a tournament in Switzerland. And we had a guy with us always who had a little black duffel bag. And he always walked around with this duffel bag, and it was chained to his arm. I thought, what the heck is in there? And everywhere we went, and in that era, you're talking a few years ago, the early 2000s, Russian credit cards weren't that popular in Europe. So they paid everything in cash. So we would stay in a hotel in Switzerland, and out would come the little black bag, and he'd deal out all these American dollars, and everything had to be paid in cash because they wouldn't give you credit. They didn't trust the Russians to do it. So all our stuff was done in cash, and it was interesting. I mean, there were stories in Russia, like the backup goalie for the team the year before I got there, he was a Czech, and he made U.S. dollars, and he didn't know how to get it out of the country. So he took his ski jacket, cut the lining out, and stuffed all the pockets that are for warm material with all his money, put it on, and that's how he got his money out the country. He stuffed his ski jacket full of U.S. dollars. So, it's interesting. I mean, there's some fascinating things that happen over in these countries, and Russia was very fascinating. I mean, I can tell you that one of the most interesting experiences, like when I got there, we had my first training camp in Russia, and I thought, boy, these guys are in great shape. It's going to be wonderful. So the first day, they have a 5-mile run, okay? And so I thought, might as well put my gear on and go for another run and I'll go with the guys because they'll be part of the team. So they take the bus out 5 miles outside of town, and they stop the bus, and they say, okay, we're 5 miles out. You've got to be back in the rink in this amount of time. So to me, it was very generous. So we all start to run, and so I'm running along, and I realize that I'm kind of close to the front of the pack, and I don't know where. I look over my shoulder, and they're all way, way back there. So I finished fourth in this supposed fitness test. Fourth, and I'm almost 60 years old, and I finish fourth, and all these elite athletes are just dragging their butts behind me, and I realized, what is Russian hockey all about? And so I asked Dmitry Yaskevich, I said, Dmitry, are these guys all they all had extra body fat. What's going on? He says, Dave, we play 19 preseason games. 19. He said, we'll get there. So I learned right away the Russians were smart. Yeah, right. They knew they'd had a long preseason and not to be too worried about going to camp in shape.
Right. Yeah. Well, Dave, we've really appreciated having you on. You've provided us lots of great insight for players, parents, for coaches. You've shared some stories with us and really, just those little nuggets, I think, throughout our previous podcasts, I think, have served our listeners well, and you've continued to add to that story. So I really appreciate that, and thank you for your time, your 7 years at Prairie, and how you've come in and really helped mentor coaches. I know that my players today, we just came off. Today was Turkey Tuesday, and they're coming off of lots of food from the weekend and whatnot, but they had pep in their step. Like you still have influence. You have influence over these young guys. They know who you are, even though you're not currently active in the game at the levels that you were in the past. You still carry a big whistle, so to speak. And so I really appreciate you being willing to give back to the game and continue to serve in that way. You continue to make a difference, and I really appreciate that about you.
Barrett, thanks very much. I can just tell you, every year when I'm invited back by PHA, it's just a real pleasure to do it. I like what your program stands for. As I said earlier, I love the fact that you're concerned about the person. And the player, you can develop the player, but you can really make an impact on the person if you wish to do that. And you do that really well. And I think that's very gratifying for an older guy like me to watch these young kids with smiles on their faces, enjoying their classes, working hard with their hockey, and their camaraderie is amazing. And I think it's a very pleasant part of their lives. They're going to look back years from now and think, boy, PHA was a great time. It was a great part of my life. So you guys are doing a great job. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate you leaving us with decisions and choices. That was my takeaway, one of the many from today. So thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Great. Well, and thank you to all our listeners out there. This was episode 14 of the Win All Day Everyday podcast presented by Prairie Hockey Academy. My name is Barrett Kropp. I am the general manager at the Academy and head coach of the U15 team. I've been joined today by my co-host, Justin Simpkins, the director of the Academy. And we are thankful that you've joined us for 14 episodes, and we look forward to 14 more and beyond. So have a great day. Thanks for listening.